Hello and good evening or good afternoon, depending on when you are watching this. Hello to everyone. So, we're going to go ahead and get straight into it. Today, we're talking about engagement data and what it tells you. Um, but it doesn't tell you the why, nor does it tell you the how, but it tells you the what. So, we're going to get into that. But before I get into that, I've already said hello. Um, but before we jump into the meat of this live stream, I just have to acknowledge that I know that there is a lot going on. And it's not even in one place, but so many things that have been going on over the last couple of weeks, couple of months. And it is unsettling, you know. Um, but for me to start the live and not even address it, I feel is in a sense pretending that nothing is happening and that it's not affecting myself or you, because I there's so much going on. It's kind of hard for it not to affect anyone, and how we process what we do, whether it is in the workplace or whether it is at home, whatever the case may be. And so I just wanted to say this. I wanted to say that how we interpret the data that we're getting, how we and what we do with it is what's going to make the difference. And I will leave it at that. But I'll say it again, and it's how we interpret the information and the data that we're getting and what we decide to do with it. That is up to us to decide how we're going to move forward, and it's something to consider. And on that note, we'll go ahead and get started with our live stream on today. So, again, we're talking about engagement data and what it tells you. It doesn't tell you the why, nor does it tell you the how. And so, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. When we think about most organizations, they value engagement, they value knowing what is the pulse of the corporation, of the business, what's going on. But the way that we use that data tells a very different story. And so that's what we are going to be talking about on today. So, for those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Lepora Lindsay, and I work at the intersection of workplace value and how systems interpret contribution in the workplace. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about engagement data and how that is used in the workplace to understand value and to understand engagement. So, one of the things I want to say is that engagement data is not something that is useless. It is something that is widespread, as in it is used. It's prevalent. When we're thinking about research done from McKinsey and Co. and McLean and even Gallup and maybe even LinkedIn and Workplace Institute. The list goes on with all of the different workplace trends and data that we get on a weekly basis. So we have access to that information. And organizations make decisions based on that data, based on the insights that they get from these reports. They're making decisions that have improved and continue to improve and continue to change what's happening. So the data itself isn't the challenge, it's not the issue. What I am here to question, and I would love to hear back from you all, whether you have questions on it as well, or perhaps there's something that you would like to interject with, is what happens after that data shows up? What are we doing with it? When we're taking it into the workplace, or even if we are launching our own datas or surveys internally, how are we translating that? How are we interpreting that in a way that can be used? Because organizations are applying this information, right? We're getting it applied and we see it applied, but it's being applied locally, but the information itself is something that is not necessarily based on context, not based on situation. There is something known as the black box organizational demography. And this was from, I believe, Jeff Pfeffer in 1997. And what it is this idea of using demographic data like age, like tenure, so the more generic things, and then using it as a proxy for organizational phenomena when we look at attrition or turnover or conflict in the workplace, and we see that it's their underlying information isn't there. We don't have information on the power struggles. We don't have information on communication issues or psychological processes that lead to those outcomes. We just see the outcome, which is fine because that is the purpose of that information. It is meant to scale. But when we apply it on a local basis, what we now have is something that's not being translated because the translation isn't automatic. We are, in essence, when we take what we see from these surveys and we just immediately apply it and we don't translate it, we are comparing on a surface level whether versus looking deeper into how can this be beneficial. Oh, Linda, too many folks, I can't see here. Too many folks seem to use it to support what they thought. Yes, versus a true reception of the data. Absolutely, Linda. I agree. Too many folks are using it, as what they thought. And that is the challenge. And that's what I am talking about here today is how are we or who. And when I say we, each organization, each place, you will have who that designated person is. Or maybe it is a group of individuals who are determining how does this apply for our situation, for our team, for our department. And that's not to say that don't use it, right? But what are we doing with it and how are we making it applicable? Because the data is answering the question as far as what is happening, but it doesn't answer what's happening at your company. It's answering, it's essentially taking comparability in place of context. So, what is something that we can compare on surface level, but that context piece is up to you. So, let's use this as an example. And I apologize because I had really intended to have these questions posted here, but I did not. And so I'm going to ask you this question. So that first question, and this is just a sample of what these types of data engagement surveys may ask. One question is, do you know what is expected of you at work? Do you know what is expected of you at work? So when people are answering these questions, number one, this question in and of itself, it assumes that there is clarity between the supervisor and the direct report. It is assuming that there is stability, or other words, there consistently we know what is required at work all of the time. And then there is an assumption of shared understanding that it has been clearly defined what has been expected of at work, and the milestones what are the milestones when they're reached? What does success look like? That in and of itself, that answer to that question assumes all of those things. And if one of those are missing, then we are missing a part of that context. I think about a workshop that I did maybe 3 years ago. It was a group of people. The age range was pretty diverse, but there was one self-identified baby boomer in that workshop. There's probably many, but one self-identified baby boomer. And he says, when I'm working with the Gen Zers, and I'm paraphrasing, but when I'm working with the Gen Zers, they are demanding all of these different things, but they aren't giving me the final product that I need. They aren't giving me the final product that needs to be successful. What can I do to ensure that they are giving me what they need and not just making demands? And, we had this conversation during the workshop, and one of the things that came up is what is being defined. And there was a pause there because there was no clear definition between what he, as the supervisor, was expecting and what the direct reports were expecting, and what success looked like. There was no clear definition of that. And so when the expectations are unclear or they're constantly shifting, that is when disengagement happens. It's not all the time that you have people in the workplace that are just, oh, I don't feel like doing this today. Like, I just don't. I mean, that could be part of it. Absolutely. But what we're talking about here is when we're taking this information that we have, the wisdom that has been collected, or the information the knowledge that has been collected, but we're not using it wisely. We're not using it as wisdom. Instead, we're just taking it as is and not adding our own flavor or context to it. And this is whether it is on a organizational level or even on an individual level, as we are in the age of so much access to knowledge, access to information, access to technology, right? We have all of this information at our fingertips. But what are we doing to tailor it to our particular situation? There was another question, and the other question, this is just a sample of what it can potentially look like. In the last 7 days, have you received recognition for good work? Again, if we take the answers to this as is only, there are a few things that we would be missing when it comes to context. We are assuming that the work is always visible. We are assuming that the system in which we are doing the work sees it and recognizes as being good work. And we're also assuming that work that is not complete, that does not have an outcome, is also being something that is useful. And so this is why I'm asking today, and I would love to hear from you all as well. When we have this data, when we have this information, and we have this knowledge, are we just applying it, or are we taking ownership of it? Because if we just take information, but we don't ask any personal questions or any departmental questions or any organizational questions, then that knowledge is going to go only so far. So that's just something to kind of think about there. And I'm so sorry, excuse me. When we think about all of these things, you can have two different organizations that are doing the exact same thing, or maybe they are approaching it differently, but they're getting different outcomes. The only way to truly know is to go beyond that surface level of comparison and do a deep analysis of what are the contexts. Number one, what is the desired outcome? How are we currently getting to that point? What are our current challenges? What are our current obstacles? If it goes down to a departmental level, what does contribution look like? What does engagement look like? And not just an internal question, but something that is being asked in a way that there is a unified understanding. So, that question that I will leave with you is that if everyone has access to engagement data, but no one owns the interpretation, Who is the data helping? If everyone has access to it, if everyone has access to the technology, we have the internet, we have AI, we have all of these different resources, but no one is owning this is how this works in my situation. This is how this works for my team. This is how this works for my company, for my organization. If we are not interpreting that, and if no one is owning that, who is the data helping? Or whom is the data helping? Right? And if that question, because that's all I'm gonna ask. That's where I'm gonna leave it. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. And it means that there is definitely something there that perhaps it has not been translated. And this is the time to have those conversations, whether internally with yourself or with a team. And we got to figure out we have all this amazing information, but what are we doing with it in a way that is applicable rather than a blanket overall, this is what we're reading and this is what's good for everyone. All right, y'all. So I'm getting ready to close out for this evening because I only go about 15-20 minutes, but I'm here every Sunday at 5:30. So next Sunday, I actually will have a special guest joining me. Rebecca will be joining me, and we're going to be talking about readiness versus qualifications or credentials. I'm sorry, credentials versus readiness. And it's going to be a really good conversation. So I hope that you will join on next week. What's we have here? Let's see, Annette. The goal is to use the data purposefully. Yes, absolutely. Because, information is great, right? The data is great. But if we aren't doing anything with it that is applicable, then I can sit here and I can tell you about all of these datas and trends, but I don't know your particular situation as you do, as you know your team, as you know that company. And so we use the data, yes, but we really have to get down to the core of context, Taylor, who is owning this? Because if no one owns it, then we have to question if it's really helping, if we don't own that interpretation. All right, y'all. So got a special guest joining next week. So we'll probably go a little bit longer, but I hope that you will join me. And thank y'all so much for the conversation that we have here, that we have direct messages, comments, regardless. I appreciate it so very much. I enjoy having these conversations and growing and learning with you all. All right, y'all. That is my time for this evening. And so I hope that you remember in the meantime to stay adding value. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Bye.